To become great at sales, what do we have to do? We typically have to change. We have to become better. We have to face our weaknesses and even our strengths, and how do we improve them and apply them every day? When it's a performance profession, yesterday helps, but it doesn't really cut it. The credential doesn't exist in sales. It's either you have it at the moment you need it or you don't. That's what we're going to be talking about today, is how to get the results that you want and to understand that we are human beings and mammals, and to train the mammal brain the way it needs to be trained, not consciously, but subconsciously, not occasionally, but every day. We are habit machines as human beings, but we have to build the habits and compound them instead of this circadian view of life that every day is just this fresh start, this groundhog view of the world, and really apply ourselves to becoming better every day. That's what we're going to be talking about. I think you're really going to like this interview and get a lot out of it, and to put a system in place for you to become better, to have accountability, to apply the circadian daily things that we need to become just a little bit better every day. And all of a sudden, time will go by and you'll say, man, I'm a different person and I'm making the big money. Okay, so let's get into the interview. Speaking of money, are you using CoVideo yet? Video email, game changer. This is the year. This is a way of connecting with other people. Mammals are visual creatures. Text, don't cut it. Video cuts it. Video has blown up my business. I'm connecting with people on LinkedIn like there's no tomorrow. Using humor and sales. I mean, let's face it, sales is a pretty funny profession. There's nothing else out there like it. So we got to... Hey, Sean, welcome to the show. As a way of getting started, tell us about yourself.
I don't know. I don't even know where to start. How far back should I go? And thank you for the welcome. For about the last 25, 26 years, I have worked with high achievers and entrepreneurs all over Canada and United States. And this is folks that are in business who perhaps want to be in business over the last, I guess it's going to be about 5 years now. We've started to do a lot of work in the space of the expert space of coaches, speakers, authors, folks that really want to grow their business, and you know they approached me and said, hey, how did you do it? And so we started doing a little bit of that as well. So that's this. I run a publishing company, work with incredible authors again all over the continent, and head office out of Canada.
Cool. And how'd you get interested in this?
I vowed after high school, I would never become an entrepreneur. My dad was an entrepreneur. I grew up in an entrepreneurial home, and I was a farm kid. And when I moved to the big city after high school, I had promised myself I would never be an entrepreneur. I remember working till 2 and 3 in the morning on weekends for my dad, and that wasn't the life for me. I quickly realized after I got my first job that I was highly unemployable. And so that kind of led me down this road. Long story, but I grew up in a very conservative home where from a dollars and cents standpoint, money was a taboo topic. You didn't talk about money. There was never enough. Even if there was, you didn't ask about it. And, we didn't get, not that we were poor by any means, but we just didn't get things that we didn't need. You had holes in the soles of your shoes before you went and got new shoes.
Yeah.
And I ended up hiring and working with Bob Proctor many years ago. And this goes, to a point in time where I still had a full head of hair. And that's where this whole thing started. I knew something needed to change, and that was that decision, I guess. I was eating macaroni and cheese for a good year after making that decision, but it certainly was one of the best I've ever made.
Cool. And what made you unemployable? Were you just independent, or
I think independent thinker, and I think the other side of the coin to that is, and it's a great question. I'm the guy that in the summertime I've got a home in the Rockies. For a summer home. If I decide I'm going to leave Thursday afternoon and not come back till Monday morning, I want to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And I have certain priorities in life, my family, my kids, those are priorities for me that, well, my clients and my businesses as well, I value family.
And when you get engaged with somebody, what's typically in the way? I'm sure you've had a pattern over 26 years.
I think there's probably more than one. There's probably two or three. I think everybody at some level has a little bit of self-doubt, whether they want to admit it or not. And the flip side of the coin is everybody at some level is a closet narcissist. And I think getting past some of that, I always tell people this: make a decision where you want to be and not where you are. And most people are making decisions where they are more of the same gives you more of the same.
Yeah.
So let's look at where you want to get and figure out what that looks like. And then the other side is, a good friend of mine who wrote the well-known book E-Myth, Michael E. Gerber, he says most entrepreneurs are not really entrepreneurs. They're technicians having an entrepreneurial seizure. And so just because you were able to go to whatever local authority in your jurisdiction there is to incorporate a company, LLC, Inc., whatever it is, depending on where you live, doesn't make you an entrepreneur. And so I think there's a little misconception there as well. And once we start to understand when we get clear on where it is you want to go, we focus on that to the exclusion of all outside distractions. And then we reverse engineer that. We say, okay, this is where you want to get to. That's fantastic. Let's tie a timeline to that. And then because we now have a timeline, we get to reverse engineer it and say, okay, here's what you need to be doing on whether it's monthly or weekly or daily. And for guys like me, maybe with a touch of ADHD, maybe even hourly.
Yeah. And have you studied like the neuroscience behind this, or are you more
at some level? I've studied the human mind for probably the last 21 or 22 years. I certainly don't know it all. I'm sure there's people out there that know a lot more than I do, but I've also studied a little bit about human. Maybe nobody knows everything, but I studied a little bit more about or a little bit. There's a study called personology, and starting to understand more about us from a visual standpoint, reactions, that kind of thing. And you probably know a little bit about that. So I mean, when I stand on a stage and I've got a group in front of me, a lot of times you see some of the transformations take place right in front of you. It's instantaneous when they get something. They have that aha moment, that epiphany.
And that's it, because I think, our mammal brain or our subconscious is always focused on right here, right now, our next meal, our next nap, our next, but that doesn't really serve us as salespeople, entrepreneurs, business people. You have to think a year ahead.
Well, and that's the key. Every organization is a sales organization. If you aren't selling, you aren't in business. And the challenge that so many entrepreneurs have, and I was in Boston at an event, keynoting an event a week ago yesterday, and it was a group of car dealers from across the United States. And, I asked a question at the beginning of the presentation. I said, how many people in the room are salespeople? And half the room. I said, the other half of you, what are you doing here? And it was like, it was funny, but, at the end of the day, there's a reality here that if you aren't selling, you're not going to be around for very long. If you can even count the minutes. So most people, I ask the question when I'm coaching a lot of times, if you left my office or you left your home and you stared at the hood of your car, you would be in an accident in less than a block. But yet you go through your entire life, you're focused on the tip of your nose rather than what's happening down the road with some forethought. And I agree with you, definitely.
And I think it has to be trained, meaning that there's repetition. I know you're a big fan of repetition, that you got to do it every day. Otherwise, you just write up these goals, put them on a whiteboard or on a book or something or in a spreadsheet, and you look at them every 12 months and you don't hit them.
Repetition is the first rule of success.
It is, yeah.
But flipping that around, we're also taught as kids that practice makes perfect. And the interesting part of this is that most of us have been practicing the wrong things for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years.
We're really good at excuses.
Of course.
Rationalizations.
Of course. Justifying why we did or didn't do something that we knew we should have or should not have done.
Yeah.
Listen, at the end of the day, for those that are watching and listening, I think it's important to note that no matter who you are, where you come from, what your background is, what your education level is, what religion you are part of or not, who your parents were, where they came, is irrelevant. There is always an opportunity for you to do something different with your life to get to a different place. I had an unfortunate conversation with somebody yesterday who had reached out to us, and he said, I can't leave my job. I make $200,000 a year. And I said, that's it? And the phone went quiet.
How do you live on that?
And I said, and this is not meant to be boastful or cocky by any means. I couldn't live on $200,000 a year. I have a lifestyle that, I enjoy, and it allows me the freedom to do the things I want to and that are a priority to me, and also to give back to those that I think need it. And I think it's important for us to look at the perspective. Our perspective shifts and changes as time changes, but sometimes we have to shift that paradigm. And the shift in paradigm comes from us making a conscious choice to replace the existing one. You can't break a habit. You have to replace a habit. So what is the polar opposite of that habit that you want to shift? The room I'm in, the office I'm in is neither big or small. It just is, because you may think it's large and I may think it's small. So it's a matter of perspective. It's really interesting. I had somebody say to me, "What's your hobby?" And I said, I collect real estate. And they looked at me quizzically, because, most people are, whatever their hobby is, they're collecting antiques, or they're doing jigsaw puzzles, or whatever their hobby is. At some point in time, I want to never retire, but work when I want to, not because I have to. If, I have a collection of real estate, they're not making any more of it. There's some value to it.
Yeah.
And so it's a perspective thing, definitely.
And are those beliefs? Is that how you characterize it? Limiting beliefs?
Certainly there's a belief system in place. And I think, the conditioning from that is they're unsolicited gifts from parents, educators, and religious influences that we grew up. And, as young people, this thing is wide open. And everything goes in. If you want an example of that, if you watch someone, once in a while they make a mistake and use a word they shouldn't in front of a young child, and that the 2 or 3-year-old runs around the room utilizing that word, I think that was a mistake, but it's because they're wide open. As we adults, we have the ability to accept, reject, or ignore any thought or idea that comes. And when we do it a few times, it becomes a habit or a paradigm. And then we do things that we don't have, I didn't have to think to do my buttons up or turn the key in my car this morning, or, these types of things. They're habitual. And so when we live life that way, we don't grow typically.
Right. Yeah. Because we are habit machines.
Of course.
Everything is a habit, whether you admit it or not.
Mm-hmm.
And what I see a lot is people building their own cage, living in it and holding the key that gets them out of it. And they won't put it in to unlock themselves.
It's true. We paint ourselves into a corner or into a box. In my first book, Change Your Mind, Change Your Results, I say the roadmap to success is printed on the outside of the box you put yourself in. And there's a reality there.
There is.
And so many people, the general thought, I think, is somewhere around 98% of the population of the Western world is waiting for someone to do something. My next book that's coming out very quickly is called Initiative, the difference between waiting for orders and taking initiative. And that's the idea is most people are waiting for something or someone, and there's this, whether they'll admit or articulate this or not, there's this idea of entitlement. The American dream is mine. I'm American. This should be mine. And, I'm waiting for someone to drop it from heaven on my lap.
Right. We see that a lot in the U.S. right now. I deserve free health care, free college, $1,000 a month. And it's like, well, you could go out and make a lot more on your own.
And it's interesting. I don't think, whether it's U.S. or Canada or UK or Australia or whatever country, westernized, you're going to see some of this happen. And well, I think what we have to understand is that you are the one that's going to create the life you want.
Yeah.
And if we go back to the 50s, Earl Nightingale said that, every man is exactly where he or she wants to be, or every man or woman is exactly where he or she wants to be. If they wanted to be somewhere different, they would do something about it.
Yeah.
So when I speak from stage, especially if no one's ever been exposed to this in the audience, I say, what are you going to do? What's that something you're going to do?
And I think people don't realize that they have control over their thoughts. They think they're reactive to their subconscious mind and the feeling and the impulse they have at that moment. I don't feel like I'm embarrassed by, it's not good for me, or that I'm not good at that.
Yeah, I think we are generally reactionary. And, the prime example of this that I use is if you drive down any freeway in North America today, you inevitably at some point in time are going to have someone use some sign language in your direction.
You're number one.
100%. And the natural reaction for most people is to give it right back, right? who are you relinquishing control to? That donkey that gave you the number one sign, or are you remaining in control? And is there a response? And so
Right.
the question we talk about is when you react, you relinquish control to the situation or maybe another individual, or are you in control, remain in control, where you are responding to a situation or to an individual, because the outcome is going to be dramatically different depending on which route you take.
And when you're dealing with a new client, how can you tell if you're going to be successful or not? I'm sure you've had a pattern of, I can't help this person is outside of my my lane.
I'm at a point in time in my life, in my career, if you want to call it that, in my business, where on a one-on-one side, I only take on 5 one-on-one clients at any given time. And I say this to people, it's a big investment of time, energy, effort, and some money. The best investment you can make is in yourself. It will deliver the best ROI. Does that mean I take everyone that comes to me? And the answer is an unfortunate no. There are some people that have this misconception that I'm going to work with Sean and I'm going to pay him a few $1,000 and magic and pixie dust is going to fly to his fingertips and I'm going to be highly successful, or I'm going to be a millionaire, or I'm going to, whatever those things are. And there's a reality here. That's not the case. When I work with somebody, it's not even about coaching. I become a resource, and it is very involved. And it's about walking hand in hand and side by side to avoid potholes and collapsed timeframes. And that's the relationship. But there's the odd time where, we'll have a conversation. I'll say, I think we should revisit this conversation in 6 months or perhaps a year, because I want those individuals that I have the privilege to work with to be successful beyond anything they have ever imagined. And if they're willing to embrace change, embrace the idea that there is some work involved, that the norm as they know it may not in fact be serving them, then we'll probably end up working together.
And do you often find that they want you to tell them what to do and do it?
There is, well, I'll say this, probably 85% of people will ask me if I'll give them a manual, I'll give them directives. And there's the odd one that certainly there's this misconception that I'm going to do all the work for them. I recall a young lady out of Chicago, probably about 5 or 6 years ago. And she thought that I was literally going to fly to Chicago and negotiate her business deals for her. God bless her, but at the end of the day, that's obviously not the relationship. But generally speaking, I have been very privileged to work with some incredible people over the past number of years, whether they're entrepreneurs, with a small business, or, I've been fortunate enough to work with some folks in Fortune 500 over the years and companies like that, some well-known people out of, Hollywood, sports figures, recording artists, most of which are, I have to sign an NDA that's, inch and a half thick. But at the end of the day, there's a reality here. Those people that really want to make a difference in their lives and those they care for and love are going to be willing to do whatever it is they need to do. I ask everybody a question before we entertain working together. And that question is, are you willing to do anything and everything it takes to get where you want to go, provided that it's legal, moral, and ethical? And I think the answer to that question speaks volumes. If someone hesitates, if someone doesn't know how to answer it, I have my answer.
Yeah. And how about as far as how often do you communicate with them? Is it weekly, monthly?
If someone's working with me one-on-one, we'll communicate in a structured way twice a month. But the reason I take on such a limited amount of people is because I'm not even a fan of the word coaching, to be completely honest with you. I think there's a stigma attached to it, and it's it's a cookie cutter approach. Here's your assignment or whatever that is. Go away for 2 weeks, come back, and we'll see if you did good. That doesn't work. I become a resource. So if you and I happen to be working together, yes, we're going to have those structured sessions. Yes, we're going to have accountability checkpoints to make sure we see that. The question be asked, where are you today in relation to where you were 90 days ago? Are we seeing the progress? Because what's the point if we're not? And then, the other side of that is very, very simply that they get to phone me, they get to text me, they get to call me. So yes, and I'm a product of the product. I've had coaches for the past 2.5 decades. And the one thing that I think pretty much all of them have said to me over time is, Sean, you shouldn't do one-on-one coaching anymore. Yeah. And I don't disagree with them. However, I love it. It motivates me. It drives me. Watching that transformation is a big part of what gets me out of bed in the morning.
And plus you get the openness, and you get to hear the real struggle that people have.
Mm-hmm.
And
I agree.
And how often do you get they're not bought in, that there's a blockage? They don't want to face the things that they really have to do because they're comfortable doing the things they're doing.
That's a really great question. I have a gentleman who out of Europe who I'm working with and have been now for about probably 10 or 12 months. We're coming to the end of that 1 year. And it wasn't until about 2 months ago, and he sent me, and he's an interesting guy. He's in his 30s. He uses language that I wouldn't necessarily use on a regular basis. And we had a coaching, and we're on Zoom, and he sent me a WhatsApp message after that, and he goes, I don't know why the expletive. I haven't been just listening to what my coach said. And within 3 weeks, he had closed 3 very large deals that he had been working on. And he phoned me and he said, I'm sorry. And I said, for what? He goes, well, for 8 or 9 months, I wasn't listening. I was arguing.
Yeah.
And it happens. When I worked with Bob Proctor many years ago, he had one prerequisite to working with him. And he said, this is the prerequisite. You can't argue with me.
And there is that mismatching personality, people who just have to argue. They always say the opposite of whatever's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
100%.
Do you try and disqualify those people early, or are you just talking through it?
It's not often that comes up. I'll say one in every 6 months where, I really have a conversation, say, I don't think this is the match unless you're willing and open to explore new opportunities, to explore a new way of doing things. Because if you knew how to do it, you would have done it already.
Yeah, because a lot of people are looking for a silver bullet instead of a process. I think the process is the silver bullet.
Well, it can be, but I think part of it is there has to be a shift somewhere before it happens, and the recognition has to be in place before that. Once I recognize that things have to change, I may not know how to change or implement the change or implement the process you referred to. And I think that's the purpose of coaching. I say this, when you work with me, you will have all the tools you need to achieve what you want to. But I'm a simple guy. So let's say that you're a framer and you frame houses for a living. You show up on a job site with a truck full of tools, but you sit in the truck and you don't get out and use those tools. Are you any good as a framer? And the obvious answer is no. Right. Well, it's the same in this scenario. You're going to have all the tools. It's up to you whether you're going to get out of the truck and actually utilize those tools. Because if you don't,
it's not going.
The results are going to show.
Cool. Hey, it's been a great conversation. Where can people go to learn more about you, your work, and get your book?
Thank you very much for that. You can go to changeyourresults.com, changeyourresults.com. Social media, Punch and Shanchuchuk. I'm everywhere, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, obviously. And the one final thing I'll throw out there right now that I think is really interesting for probably folks who are listening. If you're in business, if you want to be in business, one of the best tools you can have from a credibility standpoint, a business building standpoint, a marketing standpoint, and even a celebrity standpoint is a book. It's not about being a bestseller. It's about having a book that puts you out there as an expert.
Hey, I hope you like that. What I like about it is you come up with a system, figure out where you want to go. Why do you want to go there? Whether it's not just money, but what does the money get you? What does the winning get you? What does being number one get you? And why do you want it? It's good to know what you want. Otherwise, you're not going to forget it. And then why you want to get it. And then you build a system, a daily routine to improve. And how do you have to believe? The number one thing that I've found, you start with forgiveness, because that gets all the crap out of your head. You forgive your parents, your teachers, your siblings, your friends. And all of a sudden, you don't forget. It's not about letting them off the hook for all the crap they did to you. It's about letting go of the things you're holding on to so that you can focus on what you do want. And then you build gratitude every day. What are you grateful for? Are you grateful for this podcast? You're grateful for my sense of humor and teaching about sales? And then you start building up what you need to do every day. And it's good to have an accountability, partner. But if you can learn how to become great at this thing called sales, about connecting with strangers, talking to them, not scaring them away. You'd never want to scare them away, because what ends up happening in sales, if we don't do our job well, guess what happens? That's right, folks. That's what's going to happen. So we've got to become good at it. And I always wanted to become great at sales, not because of the money. I hated wasting my time, flying places, working really hard, and then all of a sudden you get nothing. You either lose a deal or it gets delayed. I wanted to figure out how to close it. And that's what I studied my whole life. And then to come up with a system, because I had an engineering background. You got to have a system. You can't just have skill, charm, and personality. The charm and personality salespeople were able to get conversations started, but they didn't understand how to close a deal. Did you watch last week's episode? I hope you enjoyed that. Check it out if you haven't. Don't be skipping out on your podcast now. I'm putting out nothing but gold here. And give everybody an update on the courses. So what we're doing is taking a very tight case study approach. I'm taking the personas that people are selling to and dissecting out what they care about and how to approach them. Then we're going to take out all of the stalls, the places where our deals go to die. You know where they go to die. You're giving out your proposal, aren't you? Oh, let's give them a demo and a presentation. Oh, yeah. Why aren't they calling me back? I'll show you why they're not calling you back and how to keep it going so that you can make the big money. We all want the money now. Come on. That's why we're doing it. If you don't like the money, go into support. Go into marketing. There's no money there, but you get to sit around and have lots of great meetings. How do you learn more about the classes? Go to b2brevenue.com, hit the training tab, and pick out the one you like and schedule a call with me. We'll talk it through. Here's the perfect match. Are your people on the internet? If they're not on the internet, it's kind of hard. You know, if you're stuck only with the phone works, and I'll show you how to use the phone. People are doing the old-fashioned cold calling. I'll show you how to do the new cold calling, where it warms up, how to leverage email, how to leverage social to start a conversation and engage so they want to talk with you, and they then ask you what you do. That is the outcome of that course. And both courses, you have access to it 100% immediately. You can pay all at once or in monthly installments. It's not a membership. It's 12 monthly payments. But what you get is all the content immediately. You get office hours, which is every other Friday. All the dates are in the first chapter. Make sure you check them out. We do it on Zoom. My Zoom link is in there. Q&A, case study, and it's the ability to hear how other people are solving particular problems in sales. I break down deals. We talk about real deals in an anonymous point of view. No one knows your name, your company, your product, your customer. Totally anonymous. And you get unlimited one-on-ones, which is a 30-minute Zoom call with me where we apply the course to a deal that you're facing. You can have as many as you want, and there's never more than a week wait to get onto a one-on-one. I got a few open this week. Get in the course and have somebody help you. Like what we talked about in today's episode. When you have the ability to just articulate where you are in a deal, where you'd like to go, what's in the way, and to prevent the stall from happening and close the deal. What's more important? And don't think you're saving money by not doing the course. It's costing you $1,000 a week not to do it. You know, the ROI there is great. Hey, tell somebody about the podcast. Connect up with me on LinkedIn. Yeah, I'm out of connections. Why do I say that? Follow me on LinkedIn. And if you see my content go by and you like it, give it a thumbs up. I'd appreciate that. Maybe a comment or share. And we'll see you next time.